court, we heard or we read about some of the things we're now seeing in this video, Chuck. And if you're just joining us, we're showing some portions of this video released by COPA and the Chicago Police Department today. There is some swearing. We have bleeped that out. We will stop the video before, or right at the moment the shot was fired. And you just saw that a few seconds before this brief chase. There was a man in a brown sweatshirt. Here's the moment this happened, and we've frozen that. And then Officer Stillman in the video, that we believe that's Officer Stillman, and he will begin to render aid, as Chuck mentioned. The gentleman who's been, the man who's been charged, I should say, Chuck, we believe that's him in that early part of that video, correct?
21-year-old Reuben Roman, arrested on the scene. He has been charged with gun violations and child endangerment. When he was in court, the Cook County prosecutors pretty much gave the narrative to the judge that we're seeing on this video now, what preceded the foot chase, and that was a series of gunshots, 6, 7, 8 gunshots that were detected by one of these shot spotter devices a couple of blocks away. When police responded to that and to 911 calls, that's when they arrested Roman, who we believe is that person that you see in the alley at one point, and then they started chasing 13-year-old Toledo, who, according to the police, had the gun in his hand that the shots were fired from, they claim, by Mr. Roman a few minutes earlier.
Chuck, I also want to ask you, you know, as all of us are watching this video, and of course we're freezing it at the moment after that shot was fired, if people were to go online and watch these videos, it is very hard. And you do have to kind of prepare yourself emotionally to watch it. As you're looking at it, though, from an investigative reporter side, what are the questions you're asking yourself that you want answered as you're watching these videos?
Well, it's difficult to ask or answer the questions without knowing what was happening around it. I started explaining about what the original police call was, the shot spotter calls that detected gunshots in the area, what police saw when they arrived on the scene, what happened as soon as the police identified themselves with both people running from them, one of them, according to the police, carrying a gun. But the basic thing that you want to look at, and what COPA is studying, is the time passage between when police identified themselves to the individuals involved, when they told the 13-year-old to stop, put your hands up, show me your hands, and then the fatal gunshot being fired. The police today told Evelyn Holmes that it amounted to 1 second that the officer had to determine whether or not he was going to fire his gun after telling the young man to drop the gun, show his hands, or however he framed it, that it was a 1 second time passage. And you really only get that if you watch it in real time and let it play out, which we're not doing out of concerns for good taste here. And the fact that this is a violent and brutal incident that you just don't let it play out on television. But if you go to the website and you watch this in real time, you'll see that it's a very short period of time, and it's very violent. And what happens after the young man is shot, as the mayor indicated, may be the worst part of what you're looking at here.
This release process is really unique. This is different than what the Chicago Police Department and COPA has done. And you mentioned this earlier. COPA has come out early and released this video after talking to the family. You mentioned Evelyn Holmes. We want to go back to her because the Chicago Police Department invited reporters to view what Chuck was alluding to. And Evelyn, you've been a reporter here for a very long time. This process, this experience, is not like anything we've seen. Can you talk about how that unfolded for you and other reporters today at Chicago Police Headquarters?
Well, I think it's important to first say that what the main, I think, concern here is all about narratives, right? It's all about getting out information. There's an anticipation because of the relationship between Chicago Police Department and many communities of color, that because that is so strained, that there's an assumption that any type of incident is going to err toward the negative, there is a lot of distrust, there is a lot of mistrust. So I think that the Chicago Police Department was trying to gingerly kind of walk that line, put out a narrative, what they believed to be the narrative, what they believed to be the truth. They wanted to show that this young man indeed was armed, and that, I guess further down the line, that this officer acted within a second of that situation and did what he could to help this young man after he was shot. So they wanted to put that, I don't want to say spin, but they certainly wanted to give those facts, because many times, as you know, things can get muddled with emotion. There are many people who may want the information, they want the transparency, but they also want accountability. And part of getting to accountability is getting to facts, right? So it was interesting for me as a reporter, because we're used to asking questions. We could not ask questions. We could not record those clips this morning. So you kind of were given this information and a short narrative, but I think it was important then, even more imperative, to ask the right questions. But I think what it did do for me and for, I think, our news team, was it gave us insight into the perspective actually of what happened. So you know what questions to ask. You know how to filter that information as it comes to you.
Evelyn, you touched on that. I just want to ask you again. So you were not allowed, you weren't allowed to ask any questions to police this afternoon. You guys were just invited in, watch this video. Was that how it worked?
Right. Yeah, and it was a video compilation. So you had like really three perspectives, right? So you had the perspective of a security camera from a church, neighborhood church, a security camera from a nearby school, and then you had the body cam of this officer that shot the teen. And so there were some stills, some freeze frames. So obviously some of that video was manipulated. It was slowed down. It was magnified. And so we saw those in that context of from beginning to end. Here they are walking. Here they are doing this. This is what occurred there. But you obviously, as a reporter, you have questions. And it was difficult not to be able to ask those questions. But it was good to be able to see that video. The main concern I think a lot of reporters had at the time was, since this video is a compilation, which means it's been manipulated, you want to make sure, you want to understand how much it's been manipulated. What we aren't seeing, we didn't see the aid, him rendering aid. We didn't see those things. We wanted to see those things as well.
Could you see, as far as you could tell in that slowed down or still video, can you see a weapon? And we're still going through a lot of this video. I know we have the photographs of the weapon and you can see it on the ground in some of these cases, but you had mentioned they really slowed it down and zoomed in on the 13-year-old. Can you see that weapon in his hand on some of the things they shared with you? And I know they didn't share everything with you.
I will say this. I see what appears to look like a weapon. There is something in his hand, but that video that remember the still that we looked at is a grainy, zoomed in still from this video that was shaky at best. And so in the context of that, the way the compilation worked is we saw the officer chasing the teen stopped. He asked the teen to show him his hands, and that is when they showed us that still, that close-up still of what appeared to be a gun in his hand, in his right hand. And then you see the shooting, and then no, you didn't see any other video. So we never saw what happened after that, so to speak, to make sure that because you want to mesh the narratives. You want to know what you're being told is what actually happened.
To see some of that as they've released it this afternoon.
Okay, again, Evelyn Holmes standing by at police headquarters. Evelyn, thank you, and stay with us once again. Right now we're going to jump over to our political reporter, Craig Wall, who's also been covering this from the very beginning. Craig.
Hey guys, I had a chance to watch some of that video, as you have seen it, as we've reported. And frankly, it's very difficult to watch. And today, the mayor held a news conference sort of talking about it. She got to see it the day after Adam Toledo's family got to see it. She got emotional today when she was talking about it. She is the mother of a 13-year-old herself, so this hits home for her in that regard. And she allowed her emotions to be a little apparent today as she was talking about it. She talked about the need for, the community to do more. She said the city failed Adam Toledo, and she talked about it in the context of, kids who are in rough neighborhoods, in tough situations, lured by gangs into lifestyles that maybe they, wouldn't want to, but get caught up in all of this thing. She talked about it, how it can be more addictive than a narcotic, and she just talked about the need for there to be calm and peace in the city, and she talked about just the need for this family, the Toledo family, to be able to grieve. Let's take a listen to what the mayor had to say here.
Think first and foremost about Adam Toledo, about what his family is enduring every single day since they learned of his passing. And I also ask that each of us give them space to breathe. No parent should ever have a video broadcast widely of their child's last moments. Much less be placed in the terrible situation of losing their child in the first place.
Clearly, the mayor impacted by this on a personal level, as well as the leader of this city that is now having to deal with the fallout from seeing a 13-year-old shot and killed. We'll have more reaction coming up later today. Back to you guys.
Yeah, Craig, you're so right. The mayor was very emotional today. And this video, when you watch it, it will hit everybody. But as a parent, when you're watching it, you can't help but feel the pain and the tears.
13 years old. We want to go back to Chuck Gowdy, who has been looking over all of the information that's been released by COPA, including calls and ShotSpotter information. Chuck, what else do you have?
Rob, let's start with the ShotSpotter. That really is what prompted this entire thing. Not only the police flooding this zone in the little village, but the foot chase, the arrest, and then the fatal shooting of the 13-year-old. Listen to this very short clip of the ShotSpotter audio that captured gunshots in that area. So those were the gunshots that police say were electronically, digitally recorded that then caused them to send units into that area. Obviously, a good number of gunshots there. This was roughly 2:30 in the morning in that neighborhood, and so they arrived, the 10th District officers arrived in that neighborhood, and then the other videos that we have shown you is what we saw play out. We have learned a little bit more information about this 10th District officer whose gun it was and who was the officer who shot and killed the 13-year-old officer, Eric Stillman. According to a citizen journalism collective known as the Invisible Project, they run a Chicago police data project that looks at complaints against officers as well as commendations. Officer Stillman, according to them, joined the Chicago police force in 2015, so he's been in the force for roughly 6 years or so. 0 allegations, they say, of excessive force complaints filed against him, and 0 civilian complaints against him of any kind. Stillman received one major commendation for his work as a police officer and 8 honorable mentions. We're not sure any of the details of those, but it is notable that in the course of his 6 years on the force, at least based on the Chicago Police Data Project, Officer Stillman had no complaints of excessive force against him. Rob?
Okay.
Chuck, I have a quick question. I want to bring you back to the ShotSpotter, which is that audio that we just heard. Can you take a moment and explain to our viewers how that technology works and how is it used by CPD?
Well, it's really fairly simple. It's a tower with what is known as a parabolic microphone up on top, and it registers certain frequencies that are attributed to gunfire and then relays those to the OEMC, the Office of Emergency Management and Communications over on West Madison Street, and it results in a police call, essentially. It's just another way for the police department to determine where there, in fact, may be violence occurring. Gunfire, obviously, is not something that should be happening anywhere at 2:30 in the morning or any other time, and so it electronically registers a police call, and then units in that area respond to whatever the intersection is or the street address where the ShotSpotter is located, which in this case was near a church, near an alleyway, and near where that foot chase ended tragically and fatally for Mr. Toledo.
Chuck, the gun that was found. Chicago police released a photograph of that on social media shortly after the shooting. Within a day or so, they showed that weapon. As you've looked over and the I-teams looked over that weapon, because according to that court case of the 21-year-old, there was gun residue on Adam Toledo's hand. Have we been able to pinpoint where that, in some of this video that we now have, where that weapon is in relation to where this shooting occurred?
Well, we're only talking about a couple block area here, according to the police reports and what was presented in court last weekend. So there were a number of gunshots that were fired as registered on that shot spotter. That gun, according to what the authorities have said, was somehow given from Ruben Roman, the 21-year-old, who was currently on probation for another gun case, handed by him, according to the way this case plays out on paper, to the 13-year-old, who then was chased by Chicago police. Because the gun had just been fired, the authorities believe by Roman, it would also produce residue on the 13-year-old's hands. There is not a belief, at least in anything that I've seen so far, to indicate that Toledo actually fired the gun either at police or a couple of blocks away. There's no video that has been released that would appear to support that, and nobody said that in any of the court records or the investigative reports. But it certainly is explainable, according to the experts, that there would be gun residue, gunpowder residue on the hands of anybody who touched it immediately after there were shots fired.
And Chuck, just for our viewers, I'm going to take you back just a little bit for those who may be just joining us this afternoon. Of course, we're following this breaking news right now. COPA releasing body cam video from this police shooting that ended with the death of 13-year-old Adam Toledo. As far as we know right now, how many video clips have been released by COPA?
Well, they've posted 17 police body-worn videos, which means videos that would have been made from the body-worn cameras of officers arriving on the scene, not only including the officer who fired the shots, but his partner, anybody else who arrived there, supervisors who arrived on the scene as well. There are a number of private security camera videos. There's recordings of 911 calls, and then a half dozen of those shot spotter recordings as well. So all told, maybe 25 or 30 different kinds of recordings. That's very typical of the way COPA operates in collecting potential evidence in a police shooting investigation.
Stay with us as the I-team continues to look at all this video and documents coming in. Our reporter Liz Nagy is in Little Village. We're starting to get some reaction from the community. We want to check in with Liz.
Rob, we are on 26th Street here in Little Village, and this is the community where Adam Toledo was born and raised and grew up. We've been speaking with many of the community activists over the last few weeks who have been demanding that this video be released. Baltazar Enriquez, who's the president of the Little Village Community Council, has really been leading the charge on this fight. So, Baltazar, that video was finally released just a little while ago. Did you watch it?
Yes, ma'am. It was heartbreaking. I couldn't watch it all. I just watched it to when the officer shoots him and the blood starts coming out of the boy's mouth. They never call an ambulance. They said in the initial that they had a confrontation, that Adam had pointed the gun at them and therefore he shot him.
Can you tell me specifically what you saw? Because you said you only watched one clip and there were 17 that were released by the Civilian Office of Police Accountability, correct?
Correct. And they claim that when he was apprehended, the officer just says, "Stop, MF," and shoots him on the chest. And there was no gun around him. There was no gun around him.
From what you saw?
From what I saw. So initially they lied to us. They said there was a confrontation with them, and therefore the officer opened fire. There was never no confrontation.
Baltazar, tell me about your reaction watching this. You have been trying to talk to people in the community about how they feel. You've been trying to calm this community, but you've also been asking for answers from the city. So what did that feel like to watch that video for yourself?
Oh man, I cried. I broke down. I've never experienced something like this, and I could just imagine how the mom is feeling. I mean, just see a child get murdered and them try to cover it up for 48 hours, I think is just the worst pain you could have. Instead of somebody giving you a hug, they're telling you lies, and the mayor's the biggest liar here.
Are you relieved that this video has been released, as painful as it was to watch?
Yes, ma'am, I'm relieved, and today we're calling on the Department of Justice to come and investigate the police department here in Chicago, to come and investigate the mayor, and if so, they need to arrest the officer and charge him with capital murder for killing a child.
Can you tell me just about some of the emotion that you have seen play out in this community since March 29th, since that shooting happened?
I mean, the emotions have been mixed. You know, some people are blaming the mom, some people are blaming the child, but it doesn't matter. You don't kill a child. You don't murder a child and then try to justify it. There is no excuse to justify a child's death.
Are you at all feeling empty after this? I mean, you have been so enthusiastic and so vocal over the past few weeks.
So yeah, I mean, it's mind-boggling. You know, I still gotta meditate and learn how to comport myself, because it gets you an anger, then you want to go beat them up. But that's not our MO. That's not our goal. Our goal is to be a peaceful protest, civilized, no looting, not destroying our city.
And that's really the message that has been coming from the Toledo family as well. They want Adam's name to be remembered and honored peacefully.
That's correct, and that's how we've been running our campaign. All our members, I want to thank all of our members from the Little Village Community Council for coming out and supporting us in a peaceful way, in a civilized way. We're going to continue mobilizing our members that way, in a peaceful way, and try to get justice for Adam Toledo.
And then, Baltazar, last question for you. Do you plan to sit and watch all of those videos that the Civilian Office of Police Accountability released today?
No.
Why not?
I can't watch it. Just to see a child get murdered, I can't watch it.
Thank you so much. Baltazar Enriquez with the Little Village Community Council, who has been leading this fight over the last 2 weeks or so, trying to get that video released. Back to you in the studio, Rob and Judy.
Okay. Liz, we appreciate it. Mr. Enriquez, very outspoken from the Little Village Community Council, mentioned he has not watched all the video and mentioned they did not call paramedics. In some of the video we've seen and shared with you, the Officer Stillman, is heard immediately within moments calling paramedics within less than a minute and also rendering aid. We just want to try and get all the information that we have out to you to share that because this is an extremely difficult and emotional time for so many people.
And as we said, some of these video releases will raise a lot more questions for everybody, so we're going to go through all of it and bring you as much information as we can. I believe right now we have somebody joining us on the phone right now.
Pastor Emma Lozano joins us on the phone. Pastor Lozano, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Pastor, your reaction, what have you watched and what have you seen?
I watched a video and I watched a foot chase, and we have to reevaluate what foot chases are supposed to, come. Because what I saw was a young child turn around with his hands up in the air with no gun in his hand and shot in the chest. That is very clear. Those are the facts. And I'm really turning to Mayor Lightfoot as one mother to another of children of color, that we cannot allow that our children be killed like rats in the street. We are human beings and we cannot be dehumanized. When somebody has their hands up in the air, that means they surrender. He told him stop. He stopped, he turned around, and he had his hands up in the air and he was shot in the chest. So what does that tell you? This officer needs to be charged with first-degree murder, and we need to pass the community policing ordinance immediately and eliminate the immunity for police, and absolutely they should not use our tax dollars from the City of Chicago Corporation Council to defend these police assassins, because it's wrong. And as a mother, I'm calling out to all mothers that we have to stand up and defend our sons and daughters.
Pastor, we can hear the emotions in your voice. Again, this is Pastor Emma Lozano with Lincoln United Methodist Church. I do have a question for you. The mayor also, in her comments just before the video release today, she said she made a point of talking about that there are too many young, and I'm quoting her, young children who are vulnerable in our community. What would be your message to the young people out there, or to our community at this moment?
And we need to protest, and we need to call for justice. When someone surrenders with their hands up and they are unarmed, they should not be shot down like animals. We are not animals. He was surrendering, and they did not have all the facts, and they went and shot him down. And there's probably other witnesses. We should see all the footage. But what I saw was murder.
Pastor Emma Lozano joining us. We appreciate your time, sharing some of your insight about what's happening in the community. Very important today. Thank you. We want to go back to We want to go back to Chuck Gowdy, continuing to scour over a lot released today and see what the latest is. Chuck, what else are you seeing?
Rob, let's go back to that the very first video that we put out when we came on the air here. The first video, the body-worn camera of the officer who was leading, who fired that shot. This event really comes down to this video right here. This is the closest encounter that we have on video of the officer and the 13-year-old in the alleyway. Very brief, ending right here, maybe 20 feet away, with the officer firing a single shot to the 13-year-old's chest. The officer we've now identified through these police reports that have been filed by COPA as 34-year-old Eric Stillman, who has been with the Chicago Police Department for about 6 years, according to some record keeping, and an officer who has had 0 complaints of police brutality filed against him, according to an agency that keeps track of things like those. But it's that video that really will be the video that will be scrutinized most carefully by COPA for several reasons. Number one, to see the timing that was involved here in shouting out commands to stop, to show me your hands, to show me the gun, and then perhaps more importantly in the video to isolate for investigators where that gun is, where it is in his hand. They claim his right hand, and then where it is on the ground. I know there's a photo that was released, as you mentioned, Rob, by Chicago police, but on the video it's very difficult to see both of those things.
All right, Chuck, and our entire team, I know your team upstairs is going through all of the videos that are just being released and coming in this afternoon. So we'll continue to stay on top of the story and continue to go through all these videos. Our entire team is working on all of these latest developments this afternoon.
We're back on the air in about 27 minutes. We'll have the latest, continue to look over all these documents and provide any new information for you at 4 o'clock. But we're going to break away now, take you to Jeopardy, and we'll see you again at 4.
This has been a special report from ABC 7 Eyewitness News. We now return to our regular program schedule.